Unleash the power of purpose with impactful business voices, hosted by Nancy Baki and Anita Larsen. Each week, you'll be inspired by stories from companies that are making a real difference in the world, and you'll learn practical tips on how to grow your business with an impact.
Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back if you're joining us again to Impactful Business Voices, where every week we talk to business owners that make a difference in the world, in their communities, in the lives of their clients and the people around them. And we hope that it will inspire you to make an impact in your own business as well. So we are your hosts. I'm Anita Larsen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Baki. And guys, today we have the greatest pleasure to have Nancy May with us on our show today. For those that don't know Nancy, she has an amazing background of advising with top CEOs and boards. But Nancy now uses her savviness to really help families tackle the elder care. It's an incredible industry, a lot of positives and negatives. And honestly, Nancy is going to be drawing from her personal experience and her corporate acumen that she has for the last 20 plus years. And she's going to guide caregivers through the twists and turns of caring of the aging parents today. She's also the brains behind the podcast Eldercare Success. And she is the author of an incredible book. For those that have not purchased it, you got to get it. How to Survive 911 Medical Emergencies. So welcome, Nancy.
Hello, how are you doing today?
We are great. How are you doing?
I'm just doing awesome. Thank you very much.
It's so great to have you here, and I'm really excited to learn more about what you do. I mean, this is obviously a topic that everybody needs to pay attention to because we're all going to go through it. So
if we're lucky, we're going to go through it. That's it.
Very good point. If we're lucky, we're going to go through it, and we'll go through it with having learned more from you and your experience. So tell us a little more about what you do for our listeners, our audience. What really is a caregiver advocate?
Oh, it runs the gamut, but as you alluded to in the opening, I use humor a lot in what I do because I think it lightens the anxiety and the heaviness really of what we're going through at this stage, because none of us wants to really see, a parent become frail and disabled or unable to take care of themselves, even if they don't have dementia, which not everybody does get. So that's the good news. But I say I've gone from the boardroom to the emergency room, and it's quite a wild ride. But a caregiver advocate is really, at least for what I do, is somebody that's there to hold a hand or give support, basically a coach to those of us who are caring for an aging parent or for a loved one. There are a lot of us who are also taking care of children at the same time. So that on top of everything else, you figure, I think it's something like 54% of us who are out there in the market are caring for not just an aging parent, but also a child, whether it be adult child or a young child. And we're also, managing those finances. So caring for mom and dad and our family is really like, I say it's, Mom and Dad Inc. It's running a small, highly complex enterprise in a very convoluted business, which is the business of aging care.
Nancy, I mean, I've known you for a few years. I have seen you from your personal journey that you've come with your dad that we see all over your podcast and all that. That's really what led you to become an advisor in the elder care. Can we just ask you just to share that personal journey? Because there's a lot of people going through the same thing that you did. And just so that they know that they're not alone.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't just dad. It was mom and dad. Dad passed away now 3 years ago at 99 and 47 days. I say 47 days because every day counts. And mom about a year and a half ago, and she was 91 in about 17 days. She did have dementia. Dad didn't. So there's a lot that's gone on over the course of the 10 or 12 years that I sort of stepped in as their POA, and slowly, you don't just jump into it typically unless there's an emergency. But with my case, I again, sort of the humor thing, I said my parents prepared me for their death since I was 5 because I was like, okay, what kind of family do you live in, Nancy? No, they did not own a funeral home. So good stories on that one, which is pretty funny too. But when I was young, as the oldest child, I had a baby sister who passed away when she was 3. I was 5. My mom's parents passed away within weeks of me being born. So there was a lot of that happiness that went on, I think, in young parents' family life with my folks. And that dad traveled a lot. I was the oldest. So I was the one that was in charge, or supposed to be in charge, even at 5, should something happen to mom and she not be able to react, to get the support for herself, myself, and my baby infant sister who was healthy. So that has just transferred over the course of time and life. And when my parents wanted me to become the official POA, which I was glad to do so, that's where things started to peak, shall we say. Eventually, my parents wanted to go to an assisted living care facility, not to be a burden to my sister and myself, which I greatly appreciate. But that said, the cost of their care at that care home, went from $3,500 a month to $30,000 a month.
Wow.
And $30,000 a month, which was $360,000 a year in change and more. That's just the baseline. That is not unusual. In fact, I just saw a report from Genworth on the cost of care in care facilities for 2023. And they say the average cost of monthly care at care facilities is running now about $10,000. So you figure, so that's $120,000 a year for baseline. So one of the things that I did was get them out of there, because I sat Dad down and said, listen, we can stay here, but I love you and I hope you're not planning to expire anytime soon. But if you are, let's count this out in dollars and cents. So I was like real matter of fact, and Dad said within seconds, okay, can we leave now? It's like, no, here's what you signed. These are the contract rules. And so we eventually got out. Long story short, over a couple of different moves, including a conversation with the head nurse at this facility, who said, if you move your parents, they will likely die in 6 months. I'm like, WTF you? Like, I called her the wicked, actually, I called her Nurse Ratchet. I was the Wicked Witch from the north because I flew down from the north. So I have nicknames for everybody, Tweedledum, Tweedledee, and the list went on. But taking them out was the best thing that I did, and I'd say I extended their life probably by about 10 years, reduced the cost of their care by a little over $250,000 a year, bought a home, which was an asset, therefore, understanding balance sheets, had a team of 6 independent aides, sometimes 8, depending upon what was going on, and ran it like a small business. You hire, you fire, you have employees to deal with, you have an asset, a house that we dealt with. We dealt with outside vendors, medical facilities, care communities and equipment that we needed, and transportation and doctors and hospitals, and life goes on. And I was running my own business at the same time. So as I said, from 1,200 miles away. So it was really understanding the sort of deep dive and holding my nose and jumping in and saying, now how do I deal with this and unravel the BS? Excuse those who are financial advisors. I love you all. But this one with a big company that my folks are dealing with, I knew was bad news. And we were ready to do a FINRA complaint, except it took me 3 years to unravel the mess that he made and start restoring my parents' financial strength again. But, thankfully with the team that I built, the financial team and legal advisors that I needed to do this well, so that I didn't become unraveled too. It was quite an ordeal. And I talked to everybody, from the guy behind me at McDonald's to find out if he was an aide or she was an aide, to you name it. I call myself the mouth that roared, because I was mad as hell and I wasn't going to take it anymore. And neither should anybody here.
You put so much love in it, Nancy. They may not have seen it, but really for you, it's that love and that passion that you have for your parents. It's huge.
Well, I would say, there's certainly love and a passion, but it was a commitment to right the wrongs. And just not see anybody else have to suffer like this. In fact, I was talking to a friend. I just found out that his dad passed, but on Sunday, sadly on Father's Day. But he had a grandmother who had also passed not too long ago, and I said, "So, how's she doing?" And he said, "Well, not too good." And she had gotten an infection in a finger at a care facility from a hangnail. And that infection turned into a major situation. And before his grandmother died, they had to amputate her finger. So, I mean, you can't make this, you can't make these stories up. So this poor woman is going through the pain of her life passing, at this time, plus they're chopping off body parts. And I had another friend who went through this, her dad, that they started with a lower leg, and then, finally it's up to his hip, that they finally like amputating body parts of people.
Wow.
This is the state of our care facilities and our care institutions. And if we don't know how to deal with it ourselves and what to watch for and what to look for, not just the financial, but the physical well-being, both physically and emotionally, then, God help us when we get there, right?
First of all, you're so lucky to have your parents at that age, 99 and 94. That's amazing. But when you're telling your story, that's a lot of major decisions to make for your parents, thinking about what they have done for us. And now you're in that position, like you have to do for them, and to make these, life-changing decisions for how are they going to end their life? Like how are they going to live the last years of their lives, to the best they can, with having the care they need, having the loved ones around them. Those are tough decisions to make.
Well, they are and they aren't. And I would highly recommend that anybody who is even close to what I call stage 1 of caregiving, sort of that I think that something's going to happen, but I don't know if I'm the one that's doing this. And if you've had these conversations with your parents, and even if you haven't, start the conversation now. You can start really gently by saying, geez, mom, dad, I'm thinking about my own life and what I want. And here's what I want. Let me share that with you because I'm not sure what you want. And so it becomes a conversation that it's not about them, where there might be paranoia thinking, oh, they're only after my money, whether they have it or not, right?
No,
But
absolutely.
it's having that gentle conversation. These are my wishes. But if you don't know what your parents' wishes are at the end, those decisions are really, really hard. And
That's a great point.
it makes the process easier. My dad's wishes were to fight to the end, and we did till we couldn't. I mean, and that final decision to sign a DNR and hospice papers for my father was, I think, at this point in my life, the most difficult decision I had to make, because we just couldn't fight. We really couldn't fight. It was 10 days before his death that I signed those papers. That's how long we waited. And it was really only the last year of his life that he really started to have major heart issues. Otherwise, he was frail, but the rest of his body was still going strong. And mom had a major brain aneurysm. Mom's life was very different. Mom always talked about, if I get to be a vegetable, shoot me. So when that actually happened, and I flew down that night to Florida where they were, and the emergency room doctor who came in and talked to me said, so what do you want to do? And he was of foreign descent, so the translation didn't work too well. I said, well, mom said if she ever got to the stage, I should shoot her. And he panicked and he said, we can't do that. No. I was like, okay, lost in translation here. But they wanted to medevac her out to a hospital in Tampa and do brain surgery at 91 years old.
Oh, wow.
And dementia. I was like no way in hell, not on this watch. I knew what mom wanted. So those decisions for her were a lot easier.
We talked about this before, Nancy. Now we have two Nancys here again, so it's going to be confusing for me. Nancy, Baki, we talked about this before on our podcast when we had guests that are, in some kind of health and wellness area. That you're in Canada and I'm originally from Norway. So I guess we've both been very lucky in the respect that we have free healthcare and access to very different healthcare system than what's here in the US. So my parents still live in Norway, and, I'm not that concerned about them because I know they're going to get the care they need. My siblings are there. My mom still works, and she works in a nursing home.
Right.
And she's already told me, she's like, no, when I get to be an age where I get too cranky, you put me in a nursing home. Just leave me there. I'll be happy.
But so you know what decision she's made. So
Exactly.
that makes, and just because a parent or a family member lives in a different part of the world outside the United States doesn't always mean it's better. It's different.
Yeah.
And the care in Canada, I was talking to a friend who's now a US citizen, but from Canada. And her mom said, when did you become so American? I mean, you're going to fight for quality of care. She says, if I don't, I'll just let them kill me. It's like, Mom, like, when did you become so Canadian and you give up? Like, so like I said, it's not right or wrong. I think it's when
Right.
it's just different. And
I think the
that's
financial
okay,
aspect,
right?
maybe that would be a big consideration because
Oh, yeah.
like you said, the financial aspect of it. And
Financial is different. And I have seen and heard horrific abuse in the UK in the healthcare system through friends' parent who had Lewy body dementia. And I mean, black eyes. And this was not done from another resident because of an issue.
terrible.
It was a caregiver. So the lack of competent caregivers around the world is a huge epidemic that we're dealing with. So that means that family members have to step in if we care.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
Yeah. And can you talk to us briefly about your book? I'm curious to know more about your book, Family Caregiver's Guide on How to Survive I don't have one to hold up on how to survive 911 medical emergencies. So what are some of the takeaways from your book?
Well, in the book, first of all, let me sort of back up into why we wrote the book. This is my husband and I wrote the book. And it was really because when you start to care for an aging parent, and even if you have a child, I mean, at some point you're going to call 911 or end up in the emergency room with a kid, period. It's just, stitches, accidents happen. And the frequency of those calls to 911 or trips to the emergency room do increase with age. It's just a matter of life in general. They're probably more frequent when you're a child, and then hopefully not, but even more so when you're dealing with an adult. And most people are not prepared for having to make that first call and what's entailed, including they may not even have the numbers on their house so they can find you. And one of the support people who helped us with the details in the book and correcting things and making sure everything was absolutely accurate was a paramedic and emergency responder trainer, dealt with the entire state of Connecticut and elsewhere around the country. And when I went to drop off the book at her home, I said, Karen, like, where? I can't find your house. She goes, oh, well, it's that mailbox. I said, the one without the numbers on it, so nobody can find you in a rural community. She goes, oh, everybody knows where I am. It's like, no, what happens if the staff changes? So having the numbers on your house so that people know how to find you. Or if you're in a rural environment or any environment and you don't know physically where you are and somebody in the car is having a heart attack with you, let's say, how do you call 911 and let them know how to physically find you? That's a real issue. And to make sure that the responders don't get hurt getting to you. Then it's like, how do you sign, like what papers do you sign or don't you sign, or how to sign them in a hospital so that you don't become financially responsible for a physical and financial liability that your parents may be incurring. That happens a lot, and you don't want to do that. So we cover those issues, how to get better care in the emergency room, whether you're walking in or being brought in by ambulance, how to get better care in the hospital, what happens over the course of the time there, how to get discharged faster, how to make decisions when you leave. Like, do you go to rehab? Do you go to home? What are the differences and the opportunities? How do you research a facility if in fact you're going to rehab? And then at the end, it's like, how do you call 911 when the 911 system is down here in the United States? And they do go down. So there are a lot of trips and tricks and things to get through this that can literally save your life, including if you go to howtosurvive911.com, you can download a free file of life, and everybody should have a file of life. I know they say electronic records are important, but electronic records have mistakes in them. And a medical professional may not talk to the next one, even if you're dealing with them in the emergency room themselves. They don't talk to one another. So if you've got the accurate information on a piece of paper, don't look in your phone. I mean, you can have it in your phone too, but the fastest way to get it, an old piece of paper, old-fashioned technology works.
Nancy, we cannot hear you.
Sorry, guys. I was sneezing and I had to take myself off mute and I forgot to put it back. Thank you. Nancy, over the years, I mean, I've seen you put that together, put your book together. Honestly, my parents are not there yet, but they're getting there. And I have read it a few times and I'm ready to read it again. It's a very short read and I'm not trying to sell it. Honestly, this is
go ahead and sell it. It's okay.
It has been one of the best books I have ever read to prepare, because you're absolutely right. We don't think ahead. We're thinking at the present moment, but we need to think, because when we're stuck and we don't know. So this is one of the best books if you've got parents.
Thank you. It's it's very simple. It's designed really for I hate to say a fourth grade education reading level. It's designed not to intimidate. It's designed not to talk down to people. But the Wall Street Journal even writes for a fourth grade education level. So that's why, we took a note from the book of journalism and how to do that. And PhDs, I had actually a doctor, an MD working for a corporation the other day say, I'm taking care of my parents and I don't know this stuff.
Wow.
So he got the book and he said it was the best thing he ever did.
That's great.
Nancy, there's a lot of hidden traps out there of the aging care industry. How, what are a few little tips that how families can actually avoid them?
Well, there are a lot of things. I would say, one of the first ones is if you find that a parent is waiting for 2 hours for a medical exam at a doctor's office, then chances are that doctor has, I say, loaded up his or her schedule so that they can, I hate to say it, take advantage of the healthcare insurance system, the Medicare system or Medicaid system. And it's, they say it's because people will cancel. Well, if you don't have people waiting in your room that long, they're not going to cancel, period. So that's important. If that's happening, I say get another doctor. Seriously. If they're not going to answer your questions, you, the family caregiver, get another doctor. On the hospital, understand that the hospital will give you medications or your parent medications that may actually interact with what they have. So having a full list and understanding of exactly what they have or given normally is key. A prime example is my husband went to the emergency room and then ended up being admitted for a kidney stone issue a couple of years ago. And he was on a blood thinner and they tried to give him another blood thinner while he was there overnight. Wow. And he said, no, and they said, well, it's standard procedure. And I said, I don't care what your standard procedure is. You want to kill me? Like, I don't want to leave in a body bag. So you decide. Actually, he didn't give him the choice to decide. He knew exactly what he was doing. So understanding you have the right to refuse is key. So that's another one. Also, very simply on the 911 front, if you need a little help, like let's say mom or dad have fallen and you physically can't get them up off the floor because they may be too large or you're too frail or something's going on, yet they're physically safe, they're just on the floor. Call 911, ask them, they say to the right side, dad or mom, you have the right to refuse transport to the hospital. Their goal is to get you from one point to the other, from home to the hospital alive. That's it. So you can use your 911 system in a variety of ways. And I think that's important to make the caregiving process a little easier, a little bit more relaxed, take the anxiety out and that. I would also say, tell your employer that you're going through this, because yes, if you've got 50 or more employees here in the States, they do have to, by law, allow the Family Medical Leave Act to kick in, which means you can take up to a certain amount of days. I don't have the number in front of me, but you can take them in an extended period. I think it's 30 or 60 days without pay. Now, the problem there is that if you rely on one income or you're relying on two incomes and you absolutely need that money coming into your family for other reasons, you're going to be without a salary during that period of time, but they can't fire you. Doesn't mean that they can't eliminate your job for some reason, but they can't fire you because you're out. So ask for help and get that. Listen to the podcast, Eldercare Success, eldercaresuccess.live. We do lots of tips and tricks and resources. In fact, I just did one on dealing with betrayal, which is rather interesting in the family and what happens, because we as caregivers sometimes feel alone. More often than not, we feel alone. And if we're the POA handling everything, then I don't call it burden, but the responsibility, the heaviness of that responsibility is a lot more significant than it is on other family members. And it's okay to say, I just need a break. I need some help. Ask for it.
Yes. So those are amazing tips for how to handle some of the things that come up and things to look out for, traps to avoid. What about society as a whole? Like, how can we better support families that are unexpectedly caught in this role as caregivers? Well, it shouldn't be unexpected, but in some cases it could happen sooner rather than later, right? Or that are just unprepared.
Yeah.
So how, as a society, can we help each other?
If you see a friend or another family member or a neighbor going through this, don't ask, what can I do? Ideally, if you know who they are and what they're dealing with, just do something for them. Drop off a meal. Do something kind. Send them a note. I've got a dear friend who's going through this with her husband. Not only did she deal with her mom, who had Alzheimer's, her dad passed away around the same time that my mom did, and now her husband is going through these issues right now. So that's really hard. And so what I do for her, and she's a very dear friend, is I just send her little note cards with something funny, saying some sort of, kick-ass note in it, and just say, I'm here for you. I know that we're separated by the miles. And I sent her a note and I said, this is when the distance really rots. But know that I'm here. I'll check up on her every now and then. And I won't say, so how are things going? So it's just, I love you as a friend. And that's okay. So just being there, send a flowers every now and then. You don't have to do that. Another friend who just went through an issue, and I found a wrap that you could send online that had a note card and a pin that had it was a heart. And I said, we're sending you a hug from long from the distance, because, I didn't want to send flowers because they die. Yeah. And this was my way to sort of say, I can send a hug in the form of a wrap. So.
Yeah, Nancy, it's beautiful. And, out of this spot, you have to have a heart to do this. You have to have that passion to help somebody. Like, you really do, but you're on it. You're so
well, you don't always have to have a heart to do it. You just do it sometimes. The style of care will be a little different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But, you have a lot of strategies out there that have helped improve the quality of care of families. Can you just, give an example of how have your strategies really helped improve that quality of care out there? And how does it extend the lives of your parents and many others that you've helped?
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples, but one that really, I think, stands out more than well, there are a lot of them that stand out, but this one, and this is what we're doing for a lot of people right now, is understanding what's in a care facility contract. Because if you're sending mom and dad into a care facility, and I'm not condemning people who do that, it's not something that I wanted to do. In fact, I took them out for a variety of reasons, including cost. But most people sign contracts assuming that what they've seen is as beauty and care from the heart, and the sales pitch is going to be there all the time. Well, that's not necessarily the case. And they don't always show you in detail how costs change over time. So in one particular case, I reviewed, 2 contracts for this individual. One contract was 85 pages long, and the other was 95 pages long.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, not unusual, especially with a continued care facility or continued care community, starting out at a price of, I think it was $800,000 to buy in. Then you're paying monthly on top of things. And then there are the surprises, the financial surprises that go along with it. So based on what I saw initially, and this wasn't even all the details, with just the top level details, I said, you have probably about 4 years to cover your costs. And unless you're willing to die after year 4, go ahead. But they had said, I'm presuming it's okay because my wealthier friends, and this is a very intelligent, highly educated individual who said, my wealthier friends had their attorneys and their accountants review the contract. So since they did that, I presume I don't have to do that.
Oof.
Every family and every case is different. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know how to read a contract. I did this for years, and I still do with boards of directors and others. So knowing how to understand the subtleties and how contracts are designed to not necessarily work in your favor, they work in the favor of the business, and how the business is structured and how to answer questions or ask questions and go along the way. It gets very personal very fast. And yes, they can ask you to leave for lack of pay. And Medicaid will not save you. And not at that rate. Yeah. So that's one. The other is towards the end of my dad's life, when we were still fighting, we were given a choice, or we were told that the doctors were not going to do a procedure on my dad to save his life. And I said, not on my watch. So I did extensive research on the insurance that he had, the Medicaid, the Medicare. They didn't have Medicaid. And Medicare insurance was going on, how the cost of the procedure with the hospital, which was going to be about $30,000, and the reason why they didn't want to do it. And the cardiologist came in and told me about, an hour beforehand that this was a decision, that they were just going to send dad home to die. I was like, no way in hell, not going to happen here, because I knew dad's orders, like fight till you couldn't, right?
Right.
So with that, the doctor came back and said, you have the right to refuse their decision and debate it. So I said, yep, sign me up for that one. Thankfully, I'm not afraid to deal with authority figures, as you can tell. Sometimes I'm better at it than others, a little bit more gentle than others, but this one, no. So by the time I was ready to have this conversation, and they waited till 15 minutes before they were going to wheel dad into the OR. I was like, those SOBs, right? They walked me into a dark room, no windows, and the lights were low, and I think about 6 or 7 other people, including the cardiologist, was with me, and they told me why. And I said, I don't care what your why is. If you're worried about him dying on the operating table, I'm willing to take that risk. I'll sign it. If you're worried about costs, I know the cost. Here's the cost. I'll write a check right now. If you're worried about, list, and the list went on. I had all the, the dings that they could hit on the way down. And I said, I'm willing to sign waivers on that. And here's a check. You let me know what's going on. And they were so taken back. And then the cardiologist said, and he put his hand on my shoulder, if I didn't know Nancy, I wouldn't be here supporting her. And I was like, you're supporting me? Like, you've been quiet all this time. I'm the one with the mouth that's roaring. Like, where the hell have you been? I didn't say that, but I want to kick him under the table. Maybe if I had like a scalpel.
You stuck strong in it, Nancy, and that's the most important. And that's what that's why we have you here today, because we want people to know that stick by your parents, no matter what all these doctors and so say, because
you have the right to say, no way in hell, not on my watch. But again, it goes back full circle to our conversation at the beginning. If you don't know what they want,
right,
then you can't fight for what they want. And you can't be the advocate. Or you can, but then it's for what you want. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily the right thing. Ultimately, you want to do what your parent wants, or what your loved one, be a spouse or partner or anybody else, or, even an adult child. That's kind of what.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a lot to deal with for anybody that has, that's in the caregiver position. So, what are some recommendations you have for families that are going through that and are in the caregiving position for them to maintain their own quality of life and being able to be there for
Yeah.
the
I
people?
would say, well, first of all, more than 40% will actually quit their job to care for an aging parent. Don't
Mm.
quit.
Wow, that's high. Okay.
I know the stress and the strain is difficult, but I would venture to say that you probably need that community, even if you're not telling your employer, because more than 50% of us will not tell an employer for fear of retribution. And when the
Mhm.
majority of caregivers are women, and yeah, I hate to say it, but guys are applauded for doing, oh, he's such a good guy, right? And we're kind of expected to do it
Yeah.
because that's our plight in life, I guess. I just whatever.
Mhm.
I buck all the rules. So anyway, but tell somebody and say, I need a little support. Can you just give me a break? If you're
Mhm.
working in a team, a corporate team, especially since we're doing this here on LinkedIn, tell your team members, look at I just need this afternoon. This is what I'm dealing with. I'll step in and put a little bit more extra time on the project tomorrow. But can you help me here? And and hopefully they'll understand. And if not, say, look at, I know that you may be going through this sometime yourself. I'm here for you too.
Mm.
So please understand that it's a team effort. We are a family, whether it be a corporate employer or a family physical by, DNA and blood types, but
Mm.
even our neighbors, and build that network of support around you. Don't be afraid to ask. It's part of our community. It's part of who we are. And yeah, we were born and we live and we do pass. So it's I don't want to say it's part of who we are, but it's part of being human or anything that's living and
Right.
breathing on this earth,
And
right?
you said the word, Nancy. It's being part of the community. Sometimes we forget that it's not just about us. It is about the people all around us. So
Yeah.
that's a really important point that you brought. Nancy, look, you've been doing this for a few years now. What has been the biggest surprise during your journey?
Oh, I would say for me personally, the biggest surprise is going through those last stages of life under hospice. How emotionally exhausting it is.
Mm.
And when my dad passed, my mom had dementia, and she saw that he was dying, yet she didn't. There were times
Mhm.
that she recognized and times that she didn't. I didn't want her to suffer from that. They just missed their 65th wedding anniversary
Oh,
by about 4 days.
Wow.
So
oh.
that was hard. But the weight on my shoulders, I mean, when dad passed, I literally had that physical feeling of like somebody had punched me in the chest, and I
Mm.
wasn't ready for that. So that's something to be aware of. And then the weight of saying, well, I'm the matriarch now, not mom, because I still was
Yeah.
caring for her. And like what to do. I didn't stop, I didn't miss a beat. So I didn't give myself really the chance to grieve. And I'm not one to cry. That's just not me. I think I cried more for my dog when he first died. It's terrible, right? But we know that our parents are gonna pass at some point, so to stop the suffering
Expectations.
versus an animal that can't talk to you, I guess maybe
Yeah.
I'm the psycho here, I don't know.
No, I understand. I get it.
And it's a different sense, and so that was important. I also learned I thought that I could protect myself from that hurt and that weight and that feeling when mom and dad passed by psychologically learning to think that maybe they had passed before they did. So, like grieving before the grieving happened so I wouldn't have to deal with
Mhm.
it,
Mm.
and that doesn't work. And then I would say the third thing really is not so much for me, but where I see others, they wait. They wait till something happens, and then it becomes an emergency,
Mm.
and all hell breaks loose. And they don't know what to do, and they're confused, and they don't have the time, I would say, don't have the pleasure of the time to be with their parents if they care about them during that process of slowing down and just saying, "It's okay." and being part of the experience of those later years. So don't wait, and don't grieve before it happens.
Nancy, this has been an incredible podcast. We really appreciate you coming together today. Um, you know, just and please, Anita, if you have anything else to say on this before we have Nancy go backstage, but I think everybody needs to get in. Anybody that has parents, whether they're 60s or 70s, whether they're healthy, take the time to learn it for yourself, for your family, for your siblings. Just become aware. Definitely get this book. Again, it's, less than 80 pages, and it's going to help guide you. Have a great conversation with Nancy, because trust me, I mean, if you loved this podcast, the conversation with Nancy is going to be awesome. Anita, anything to add before we go?
No, it's just been an overall great conversation and something we all need to talk about and need to know. So thank you, Nancy, for joining us.
I just one last thing before we go. I would say that caring for an aging parent takes a physical, emotional, psychological, and financial toll on people. It doesn't have to be. So please know that it's going to be a time in life that you're never going to forget. And hopefully it's going to be one that when it does end, you'll have a few smiles along the way.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you, Nancy. We're going to put you backstage. We'll come and join you back up in a minute.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
That was a great conversation.
Oh, that was really great. It was really great. And it's funny because, my parents are in 70, 75. They're soon to be, they're healthy, thank the Lord. But, we never know. It's really important that we just information, get to understand it and know what's going on. So let's do our takeaways.
I think one of the things that stood out to me, and I think Nancy touched on it briefly, we started this conversation talking about aging parents, but it could, of course, extend beyond that. It could be your spouse in some cases. It could be, like Nancy said, it could be adult children. Like, you don't know what's going to happen in your life and what position the people in your life is going to end up in.
Absolutely.
So you could end up being a caregiver and not expected. So you should prepare, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a few things that I had noted down. I didn't know the average is 10,000 baseline just to take care of the elderly. That's huge. That means people need to get prepared. And there's others that are 30,000 monthly. I mean, oh my Lord.
It surprised me too. Like, the cost is so much more than I expected as well. Yeah, that surprised me as well.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of knew this as well, but I guess, hearing it from Nancy, doctors, if they're not answering the question, find another one. Just because the doctor is saying something as well doesn't mean that they're correct. So you need to do your own due diligence and just know that you have the right to refusal. Like, that is so important, I mean, I know a lot of people that they just go to the doctor and say, okay, no problem, ma'am, and no problem, sir. And I'm like, no.
They wait 2 hours before they get in to see the doctor every time they go. I feel like that's almost common practice. Like, it's supposed to be expected in some.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it even got worse after the pandemic as well. But that's another topic that we won't go there. But also another thing is, I mean, I didn't know. I mean, even though I'm in Canada, but in the US, you guys have 30 to 60 days that you could take off. Yes, it's without pay, but it is worth every moment, especially when you only have a few days or months with your parents. So that was really great.
I think one key thing that Nancy kept repeating as well is to communicate with your parents, knowing what they want, knowing, how do they want to live their last years of life. And just having that conversation is so important. You can have that at any time and just help prepare you and them.
Absolutely. And one of the last things she was mentioning is when revising the contract. Oh my goodness, I've heard horror stories from Nancy. Definitely revise before you sign. Even if you know somebody else that signed it, there's a lot of things that you need to check. The costs change over time. Any financial surprises later on, you're not just signing for today, you're signing for the rest of their life. because keeping in mind that every case is very different, and always ensuring not to be alone. Don't stay in your little bubble. Go talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So that's.
Can we end on my last takeaway, Nancy? Because I think it's so important.
Yeah, go for it.
And that's one of the first things she said is every day counts.
Yes.
And I love how she counted the years and the days her parents lived. So every day counts. And I think that's so important. We all have to keep that in mind.
Absolutely, Anita. That was really, really great. Really wonderful. I really enjoyed it today. I mean, I enjoyed every time.
So
special.
With that, thanks again for joining us on another Tuesday. And make sure you keep in touch with Nancy and myself, find out what's going on, opportunities for additional information to learn from us. Subscribe to us on YouTube to not miss out on future episodes at Impactful Business Voices. And Nancy, tell us about next Tuesday.
Yes. So next Tuesday is our monthly business lounge that Anita and I hang out with you guys once a month. So we're going to do something a little bit different where Anita's going to actually interview me next week. We're going to be talking about something that many of you may not know about me. In addition to supporting businesses every day, I also do help business coaches, business advisors, business brokers, accountants, really anyone that helps businesses make a difference in the world. So for those that really have a passion in helping businesses grow, have a life, there's so many things. Don't miss next week. Let's help change businesses together because the world really needs us.
So looking forward to that. Join us next Tuesday. And until next week, go make an impact.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Impactful Business Voices. Subscribe now and don't miss an episode.